All right, so I am ready to go. Just give a little signal in the chat menu if you know of anybody else that's meant to join. I will absolutely do my best to pay attention to the chat menu, and I would love for this to be the opportunity. If you do have any questions, please let me know. It'll definitely be nice to have it interactive, but if it's just a demo situation, I'm okay with that. Oh, thank you so much, Taylor. I appreciate that. So we'll have one more joining us. And so I'll keep my eye out on the chat menu. Again, if any questions do come up, let me know. So it's Ariana and Taylor so far. I'm so happy to have you join me this morning. My name is Tracy Collins. I've been an educator for about the last 23 years, and I love the opportunity to be able to teach in person, as well as this amazing opportunity in Zoom has come up. I'm sure it's not to your surprise at all that navigating through Zoom can be I might be a little technically challenged, but definitely getting a handle on that. So again, just give me a chat. I've done quite a few videos, so I'm pretty good about making sure that everything is visible that I'm showing and that type of thing. But please let me know if there's anything that you need to have a better view of, and I'll make sure that that happens. So what the theory and the focus is on for today is working with Pixie haircuts. And so what I did is I went through and I have a couple of pre-sectioned heads that I want to talk a little bit about, and then we'll go right into doing a haircut. And so if you do have any questions as I'm going through that process, stop me, ask me. I love to be able to engage and interact. So first and foremost, I think it's always important to be aware of the head shape. Even as we get into our advanced haircuts, taking it back to the fundamentals and the structure of the head is going to be really important to make sure that we have that balance that we need. So things as far as we know, dividing the head from front to back is going to be our center profile, parting or section, depending on if we're working it for a guideline or just to divide the head from side to side. So you see that running through. And then a radial section is going to be another key point, dividing the head from front to back. I think it's nice and important to note that anytime we're working with that section, that it's not at the apex of the head, but it's more back a little bit further at the crown. So that's going to be more of where the hair naturally lives, which becomes really important as we start to do shorter haircuts. You know, as we work with long hair, sure, we can style this back and away from the face. But as we work with our Pixie haircuts, the hair actually from that crown area is going to fall more forward. So being aware of that. And then the other key one, that key parting that I want to note is just that horseshoe section. So as we know, that one is dividing the top of the head shape from the underneath of the head shape. So that one is a really beautiful haircut, or excuse me, parting and section for any time that we're doing something like a Pixie, so we can approach perhaps the underneath, and then we can go through and work with the top section. And then I've got all the other partings and sections worked in there as well. I'm not going to get into a whole theory around that at the moment, just because I want to allow quite a bit of time for us to go through and do an actual haircut. And as I go through, I'll start to talk about, you know, elements of distribution, elevation, and then of course how we're going to go through and cut. But I just wanted to note that on the mannequin head that's bald, just because those reference points are so important as we start to get into everything from a consultation to a haircut all the way through. And even, you know, I'll talk about it in a moment as I have my head with hair. But as we get into that consultation, it is really important to identify what the head shape looks like, quite a bit more so than if we're just going through and doing a long haircut. You know, the head shape, it still absolutely matters, but not the same as if we're going through and working something like a Pixie. You know, if they do have a flat crown, perhaps we can go through and bring that section a little bit lower So that's actually going to provide a bit more length and weight. Or again, you know, looking at the hairline underneath, you know, is that hair going through and growing up and in? Maybe it's asymmetric and one side is growing up and the other side is going down. So making sure that we're analyzing that as we're doing the consultation, because that hair is going to be so much shorter. So those natural growth patterns are really going to take an effect. You know, the same, I feel like during these times, I've noticed quite a bit of my clients have had different areas of even perhaps hair loss. So being aware of that, you know, in certain areas to make sure that we're not going through and exposing or taking that hair too short. So all of that involved in, oh, I have Lily here as well, but all of that we want to pay attention to as we're going through and working with our haircuts. Hi, Lily. Thanks for joining. Oh, no, it's okay. Totally understand. Thank you so much for being here. So what we did is we just, you missed my breakdown, the most interesting part of going through and just talking about the partings and sections. So we'll be revisiting that as we start to get into the haircut as well. And I just went through my I trust that if you have a question, we know how to navigate Zoom. I trust y'all probably know how to navigate Zoom better than I do. I've been fumbling around with the videoing and whatnot. But so I'll just continue on. I have two pre-sectioned heads that I wanted to show. For me, as I go through and work with shorter haircuts or pixies, there are three types of sectionings that I'll go, and they provide an unlimited number of possibilities of how I can go through and work any haircut to customize any client that I have that wants to go shorter. So the first one that I will show is working with our halo section, as we probably already know. Anytime we're taking those sections too, I always like to start with that center profile and then the radial section, just because that allows me to get the balance right away that I want. And it's not to say that I have to have like a perfect circle. Maybe I want to go through and have a little bit more towards a diamond or a little bit stronger angles, but it allows me to set that section up with ease. You'll also notice with this is I took the opportunity to section the back and the front in two different ones. So that helps me possibly with a haircut like this. I might approach the nape area and then I can go through and work the fringe, maybe adding an extra section through here, and then the back, and then the front. So by working with this halo section, it allows me to address the perimeter first, and then allows me to go into that interior. So I feel like by having that head shape planned out, not only does it allow us to evaluate the head shape itself, but it gives us a point A to B to C to work through any haircuts that we're gonna be doing. So I'll do this quite often with my haircuts. This also is a beautiful idea, obviously, for like a moppier shape as well. If you're not necessarily wanting to follow the hairline, but you're wanting to get a little bit more of a moppy feel, this is a beautiful idea to go through and work with. And then we also have this one that I've pre-sectioned that is more of a delta section. So what that means is we're working from the crown area, but that's reaching up and over the parietal ridge and then dropping into the recession area. And so by working something like this, it really is gonna allow us to get quite a bit shorter and croppier and kind of really collapse the side areas within the haircut. I do this quite often if I'm gonna do like an undercut where this is shorter and then perhaps I wanna maintain more length in the front. That's a really beautiful way to do things as well. I mentioned the density and the shape of the crown. Now maybe if they're a little bit flatter in the crown, we might wanna take that section a little bit lower through here so we're creating more weight. You know, with any of our shapes, especially if we're talking about a disconnection or an undercut, just being aware of that density so we can adjust those sections according. You know, perhaps if their hair is a little bit finer, I would drop that section down a little bit lower so I'm not taking so much from underneath and collapsing that weight out. So I just wanted to show this because these are the the first two ideas that I would go through and work with the Pixie cut.
Tracy,
yes.
I'm so sorry. Anna asked if we could record it, and I didn't want to interrupt since you were on a roll. So.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, anytime you have any questions or anything, let me know. I can say two things on that. I fumbled through for a moment. I can try one more time on, because I go to this record button. I should have, I tested everything, but didn't test this. So I have it recording on my phone.
Okay.
But let me try this one more time. Record on this computer.
That's what I get for being late, sorry.
No, I appreciate it. And it says recording, but I know that it would pop up.
Okay.
So I know it's not. Let's see if we open this. No. Yeah, I'm just going to trust it and send it to her on the phone. Because I do have... No, I appreciate you. Yeah. All right, so we'll get right into our shape. How is everybody this morning, by the way? You can even enter it in the chat menu. Maybe like one word or more, but just one word, like how you're feeling. And it's fine if I teach a lot of yoga too. I'm like tired, awake, alive. I'm pretty excited because I love having this interaction. Anything? Oh, this is gonna be a long demo for y'all. Just playing. Okay, so what I've decided to work out for you, I'll be transparent. I was going to have a live model, but then at the same time, it's nice to be able to work with a mannequin head just because I can go through and do whatever shape that I want to and take it at whatever pace I want to as well. And so I do. There is a nice place for working with the mannequin heads as well. So what we're doing today, and I also like my tendency was to like comb everything back, but just like in the salon, I feel like then that natural, you start to lose where that hair is naturally gonna fall. So when that client comes in, again, they've got the hair, you can take the opportunity to see, you know, how is their hair falling through the front? What's the density of their hair like? Definitely pull it up, even with long hair. You can see how that hair is growing. So you can start to already create your plan of action for the haircut that you're gonna work with. And I like to, you know, get a feel for what their comfort level is. You know, if they're coming in, they're already so, you know, if they don't have a Pixie pre-existing, I love it when my clients come in and want a Pixie. I feel like it's bold, it's strong. We can keep elements of femininity, which are really, really powerful. But just getting an idea of what kind of statement they want. You know, with what we're gonna do today, I wanted to go really strong, really short to expose the eyes. But I wanna keep elements of softness right through the front area. So that gives her the ability to tuck it back if she wants to, or she can wear it forward. So she's got those options. So I would say definitely consultation is key in creating that shape, mapping out. Then of course we're getting the shampoo in. And then as they come back, just being really aware of those sections that we're working in. I'm gonna play with, I'm not gonna talk too much about products. Possibly I could not talk any about products since it's non-branded. But have y'all worked with, I know y'all are working with Arinco a little bit, right? Okay, so.
Yeah, we do carry it in our salon, yeah.
Amazing. So I got this and I'll switch between a couple different product lines. But with just utilizing, I'll keep it at this, utilizing a product that's going to be nice for cutting, that's gonna maintain the moisture in the hair, that has a bit of flexibility to it, but also starting to build some texture and support. So it could be really anything that you choose to. I just like to make sure that it doesn't have too much grit to it as a cutting lotion. So this will you know, something that's going to provide a lot of softness and flexibility. And I'm just working this all the way through from the mid shaft to the ends. And then I'm going to work with a horseshoe section. So as I'm working that in, I'm really keen on going through and starting from that profile parting. So that allows me really nicely to set up my balance. It also allows me to see how far I want to go down through the crown area. Once again, I've mentioned it, if their head shape is flatter or lacking in density, the last thing I want to do is go really high up on the crown area where it flattens it out more. So I can take that section a little bit lower down. And then we've got the different areas of the recession as well that we're looking at from the high, mid, and low recession. So paying attention to that as I work through. And so I can just go through starting from front. I can place my thumb just right where I want to drag that section to. I'll grab my clips so I'm ready to go. Slide them through. And then if I can have anybody tell me, like, what would be the difference of working higher on the recession versus lower on this recession? How is that going to affect my haircut? Will it affect my haircut? I'll give y'all a couple of seconds as I go through and continue working. So I'm just making sure that as I work through, I like to have the hair combed in the direction of my section. And then from here, just starting from the front area, and again, working that section all the way to the back. So staying as clean as possible. Also, one of my favorite tools is going through and making sure that I'm looking at my mirrors. Because whenever I'm right into the head shape, I feel like we can lose a little bit of that balance. So if I step away, pretending I have a mirror there, but I can really see that shape with a lot more clarity. Any answers on the, didn't forget about my question, on when I might want to take the section lower versus higher?
It depends on the density of the hair. If they have a lot more hair, you would want to take something up a little higher, versus if they did not have a lot of hair, you'd want to take something lower so you can preserve the amount of hair that they have on the top of their head before cutting into the perimeter.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's not only one answer too, but that's something that's definitely a great point. Anything else we want to consider as far as where we're taking that section? The other thing that I noticed as far as where we take the section is if we go through and bring the horseshoe lower down, we're going to get a bit more roundness with the shape. And anytime the section is higher up, we're going to get a little bit more of a square feel with the haircut as well. So that's something that we'll take a look at. That's where sometimes, if we're talking about a men's haircut, for instance, I typically, a lot of times they have a stronger parietal ridge. And so that's where I'll tend to go a little bit higher, just so I don't have that roundness falling through. But that goes for whether we're, any gender that we're working with. Having that lower horseshoe will provide a bit more roundness for us. So just deciding if we are wanting to see that or not. So I've got that section in. As I get to the front, I'll go through and work a little bit more of a zigzag section. But I just want to approach the underneath of my haircut, start to form that nice outline. And then from there, we'll go through and work the top. Hand position is always going to be important in our haircut as well. If our palm is facing us, it's going to encourage us to have our elevation a little bit lower. I'll always just go back, as far as a learning purposes, sorry for my reach. When I'm not sure, I'll go back to like a bald head, or you can just do it on the head itself. once we get distribution and elevation in there, sometimes we're like, oh, this is comfortable. But what ends up happening is I end up naturally, as I should, dropping my elbow, and then the elevation ends up becoming higher. So you're not able to get into that hairline as much. I'll see so many people come overhand, and if they're staying true to where their fingers should be, now we've got all these problems with their back. So I want to make sure that as I go through, underneath the horseshoe, I'm always going to have my hand facing me, my palm facing me, and that's going to allow me to get into the shape with quite a bit more ease. So we're starting in this back area. I'm going to go through and work the hair at 90 degrees from the head shape. I'm going to work with point cutting just because I want to see quite a bit more softness. And so I'm working underneath, creating that looseness, straight out from the head shape, and then I'm decreasing in length as I go through and work towards the bottom of the section. And even from the top, I can already see where that's hugging the head shape, so I can assess if I want to go a little bit shorter or if I'm happy with the shape. I do want to start to already build texture into the line that I'm cutting, just so it saves me a little bit of time in the end. But you notice as I'm going through, I actually almost rest that scissor blade on my finger, and I'm just moving my thumb. So it gives me quite a bit more control as I'm working through. So again, my hand position as I'm working towards the bottom is working into that nape area. So I get that beautiful decrease in length. Once I'm happy with the guideline, just gonna go through, take that center parting, pull that out of the way, and then take my next slightly diagonal forward sections. What I like to think about with any section that I take is I want to make sure it's actually going to, instead of being such a severe angle where I'm going to build weight, I actually like to think about where would that angle continue if I was working all the way up, which we want that angle to come right to the crown area. So that makes it really helpful for me to make sure that I'm staying to where I'm following the head shape. And then I also make sure, as we know, body position is going to be so key as we're working through as well. Sometimes there's this tendency to stay rooted with our feet and keep working through. If I do that, chances are I'm going to get longer and longer. I'm going to be over directing that hair back. So each and every section that I work with, I want to make sure that I'm taking a step around. We have that tendency, which is great, to pull the hair, or we should be pulling that hair right towards our core. So if we're standing right on top of our section, that's going to promise us that we're going to have the same distribution all the way through. So it takes a lot of those challenges out. And I will, each time I'll go through, comb from the front of the section. I can even go through and comb from the back of the section to make sure that I'm not over directing that hair forward or back. And the last thing I'll mention about that is, for me, rather than going through and doing the entire side and then, oh, let me cross check, I actually will go through pretty much every section to see if I'm on track. And that's going to give me so much information. That way, I just don't like to have to go back and do a haircut. You know, if it happens, it happens. But you know, cross check along the way, and that'll show you what the tendency are. You know, we're all gonna have I have that, even on a mannequin head, I have that thing where I'm like, I don't want to go too short. So I naturally sometimes will just over direct hair back unnecessarily. And so that's something that I'm very familiar with. And it's just something that I make sure to check myself on. That way I can get through my haircut with quite a bit more ease. The other thing, as we're talking about body position, not only is it incredibly important that our body position is exactly how it we want it to be. But be aware of the head position of the mannequin as well. You know, that's one thing I notice so often is people will contort their body so much to be able to get a shape in there. Whereas it does provide so much more ease if I just tilt their head forward a little bit more, then I can access the shape. So make sure that they're also involved in that haircut as well, and moving the head where they need to. So again, combing the section from the front, I can peel that hair away, make sure I can see that guideline really nice and clearly. And I'm just gonna continue that soft point cutting all the way through. And you can see my fingers are still angling in towards the hairline. So that allows me to get that really beautiful shape where the line decreases slightly in length. Another thing that is a great idea as you're working through, especially if it's a lot of hair, I can actually go through and section the hair that I'm not working with. I can section that out of the way. And so that also just allows me to stay right on top of my sections. There we go. And I'm just coming right back that corner. I had my elevation up a little bit higher, so it gave me a little bit more length than I want. In some cases that can actually, we could do that intentionally if they want softness, but in this case I do want to create quite a bit of strength in the hairline. So I just want to be right on top of where my distribution and elevation are. Switch that out. There we go. So again, just pinching that shape, making sure that my body position is where I need, looking at that guideline, and just continuing it through. One of my favorite things, honestly, about working with the Pixie haircut on a client is it truly has helped me to build a clientele. And honestly, not just a clientele of short hair. Like, it is so striking. People notice a Pixie haircut all the time. So I will get clients that'll come in and they're like, oh my gosh, I saw Lisa when I went to this shop. I loved her hair. I'm like, oh, are you ready to go short? They're like, oh, no, I don't want to take any length. I just want to do a trim. But it's like, people notice it's really striking to have a shorter haircut. So it definitely is one of those ways that you can, to build a clientele or just inspire someone to get a little bit, something a little different. So I'm just gonna go through, work just to the top of the ear. So I'm getting that one last section, working through all the way to the top of that section. And then I'm gonna do a slightly different technique as I get to the front. I do like to work from ear to ear. That way I can check my balance. And so then as I go through and make sure my balance is there, I can approach the front. I know it's gonna be perfectly balanced rather than, again, dragging all the way through one side, doing the other side to notice that the first side needs to be just adjusted a little bit. So it's just that I feel like it's those tips and tricks that make such a more easeful experience for your client. And it is, I mean, a lot of times it is something that they're going a little bit more bold, for instance, and it's already feeling short. So if we're being a perfectionist, as I believe we should, and we're going back and forth, that perception is, my hair is getting shorter and shorter. It feels less intentional. Whereas if we go through, what I always make sure to do is go through on the side that maybe tends to be a little shorter. If I do that first, I can spend 20 extra minutes on that second side being detail orientated, and that's how it's going to be perceived. So I think always just being aware of our tendencies and using them to our advantage is really helpful. So going through, going to pay attention to the moisture content as well. I don't want the hair to be sopping wet, but I do want to make sure that as I work through the shape that it's not too dry. The hair will fall differently as I work from wet versus dry. So as I come to that other side, I mentioned hand position before. I want the palm facing me so I can get into that neck area, but I want to make sure that I'm actually changing the direction. Good, I feel so silly at this point saying it, but a good rule of thumb, you're actually pointing the thumb in the direction that we're going from side to side, and that just ensures that you're on track with it. You know, the thing is, if I kept my fingers facing down as I came here, yeah, I have all this hair, so yeah, that feels comfortable, but what ends up happening is I end up shifting where I'm slightly diagonal back. I'm gonna have more strength on this side because it's working like a diagonal back section, and more softness on this side. So even though it's like, oh yeah, I can get my hands in there, it's like that's gonna start to shift as I continue through. So as I mentioned before, just place the hand on the head shape and see what feels more comfortable. It might take a little bit of time if you've done it differently to develop that muscle memory, but it'll become easy as you work with it. I imagine you all already have pretty strong habits anyhow, but I know even sometimes I can think of many examples in life where it's like, oh no, this is what I've been doing, so it feels better. So just go back to like bringing the hand on the head shape. The other thing I do want to make a note of as I'm working through is for me being a left-handed, this is kind of mirrored anyhow, I am left-handed.